Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Bacassa. This week, we've got a very special guest, someone that would most likely be considered a competitor of mine, but in reality, we really enjoy working together because we have some valued interest for the fly anglers out there in our industry, per se. So I've got Brian Oakland on the line. Brian Oakland is a Montana boy by heart, grew up fishing with marshmallows and worms, transitioned into fly fishing, and eventually went on to school, became an entrepreneur in multiple small businesses, very successful. And then ultimately you built the organization gotfishing.com. Gotfishing.com is a booking agency. And today we are going to walk through how he's been successful in the booking agency since 2018. And how I'm transitioning into the booking agency as well from my hosted trips only. And I think the value that we're going to discuss, or the commentary that we're going to have around today, is really around the value of using a booking agency, because some people, I think, underestimate that value. So we want to help facilitate that as an angler. There's a lot of times where trips, et cetera, are, they're life savings trips, or they're once in a lifetime adventures, or there's a lot of confusion around the value. The last thing we're going to do on today's show is jump into our tip, and we're going to discuss how to approach water and stay in the mental game. There's some typical things that we've seen, and Brian, I know you've seen oftentimes where anglers start to fall out of the mental game and they struggle with that. And then therefore what happens? Their fishing starts to tank. But if they stay in the game, it really comes out on the outcome that they ultimately want. And that's, typically success. So Brian, welcome to the show. I'm excited to get this conversation going because we have the same passions in a lot of way. And we're going to really, I think, help a lot of people here with their decision-making on trips, et cetera.
Well, I really appreciate this opportunity to be on your podcast. You have an amazing podcast, and excited to have a great discussion about using a booking agency for your next adventure.
Yeah. So what initially got you to kind of make that jump? I know you've been an entrepreneur in a bunch of different ways, and then all of a sudden you made a change to the booking agency side.
A lot of it was I knew some people that were doing hunting, and they had a lot of success in guiding people to the right hunts, because there's a lot of confusion in the hunting world as there is in the fishing world. It's also very, very expensive. And so I thought, why not fishing? The hunting world is, I actually hunt, as you can see, we're at one of our lodges here. But, the fishing industry, I know, is one of, most popular sports on the planet. There's lodges all over the world. It's seasonal, right? There's trips over in Argentina. Their summer and winters are opposite ours. So there's just so many opportunities. And I myself had heard the same stories that you hear in the hunting industry about people going on these amazing adventures and having them not meet their expectations. And so I know that Got Fishing isn't the first booking agency out there. Obviously, I did some research and saw that there were some other agencies out there that had gotten a good head start and also were, providing a great service. And so I thought, there's already people in the industry doing this, so there must be a need. And so, jumped in. Wanted to do things a little bit different than what I had seen. So, what makes Got Fishing slightly different than some of the other booking agencies out there is that, and this isn't a slam on them, they've done an amazing job, but we're more of a boutique fishing agency. So you're not going to go to the website and get a red robin of trips. There we have a nice selection, whether it be Alaska, Argentina, Mexico, Christmas Island, a variety of really cool places. But our whole deal is just being intimate with the excursion, the lodge, the different experiences that come with it. And so, we just run a little bit smaller group and a little bit more intimate with the experiences that we're providing.
Yeah, and I think you're on the same boat as me too, in that, you go to these locations.
Yeah.
I either go or I send a trusted team to go and vet them. There's a certification process in mind where we basically say, hey, look, these things need to be met in order for them to be part of our organization and in our advisement. And in my scenario, I know my certification process has a certain subset, but there's also quite a bit of variance in that. And the variance is in accordance to what is the angler looking like? Because not every angler is looking for that 5-star dinner environment, the highly endorsed, ultra expensive, etc. Some are looking for a camp,
Right.
a fishing camp, but they
Absolutely.
want to be with fishy guys, or they want to be where the species is, or whatever it may be. And I think that's something that is, often overlooked, right?
Right.
It can be a variance, quite a bit of variance. And then I think the other element, and Brian, I'd love for you to talk about this, is the costs associated to using an agency, because that's a misconception by a lot of people. So if you could kind of dive into that, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the beauty of using a booking agency is, at least I can speak for myself and you and the majority of them out there that I see that are doing a great job. All of our services are 100% free. So unlike using a travel agency back in the day prior to, the internet, they charge the fee for taking care of that and organizing your flights and your shuttles and all of those things. And it was a convenient, it was a convenience, and you paid it in many instances. But this is different. And I think a lot of people out there think when you use a booking agency that you're going to pay slightly more for your trip. And the reality of it is the outfitter takes care of us on the back end. Many of you have been to trade shows. You guys have seen the outfitters there. They've coming down from Alaska. They're coming over from Chile, Argentina, up from Mexico. They're having to spend a lot of time, energy, and money to come to these different trade shows to get in front of you, the angler, to tell you about their trip and hope that you end up booking with them
Right.
that season. So if we can be doing that for them, because we're going to the trade shows, because we have a more intimate presence, whether it's through these podcasts, being at trade shows, databases that we've all collected over the years, and we can get the messages out to them, all the better. And they're not spending the money on the trade shows, so they take care of us on the back end, and really ends up making it a win-win for everybody, because the outfitter gets to stay and continue to focus on what they're good at. You and I focus on what we're good at, and that's being good listeners and listening to the exact trip that the people are looking to go on, and then matching them up with the exact outfitter that's going to meet that, those expectations and that experience. So, and it's obviously a win for the person looking for, one of these experiences, because even my outfitters, and I'm sure your outfitters that are, do an amazing job, super well intended, they're out on the water most of the day. When they get
Yeah.
back, there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that they need to do. So they do their best to return the phone calls. They do their best to get the questions answered. But today, people, like when they inquire, they want information immediately. They want to have a discussion immediately.
Yeah.
One of the things that I know about fishing is, any of these experiences, it's an emotional purchase. You decide that you want to go on one of these things, whether it's here on one of your local waters, just getting a guide. Maybe it's heading up to Alaska, or maybe you're a little bit more experienced in your traveling around. These are really big deals. Some stuff that people put a lot of thought into, and they're emotional. So meaning that people that make these decisions kind of on the spur of the moment, and a lot of that decision is yes, I'm going to go, or no, I'm not, based on the information and how readily it comes in, how easy it is to communicate with the person, get their questions answered in a timely fashion, and just keep that excitement going. So I think that's what, booking agencies like you and I do a great job of, dispersing information. The other thing that I think is super important for the angler to know is that what makes us different than the lodge is that the lodge has a vested interest in you booking with them. We have
Right.
we have no vested interest in what lodge you pick. Our vested interest is in you picking the exact experience that fits your need. So, like in
Right.
Alaska, I use Alaska a lot just because, um, that's obviously the a number one fishing experience that people start with, or have kind of been dreaming about getting up to Alaska. So what we've done is we offer, a few different experiences, from kind of that inexpensive introduction into Alaska. You're going to catch fish. You're on a beautiful river on the Naknek. You can do some flyouts if you want to bolt those on, but it's just a great way of getting to Alaska, enjoying that lodge-based experience, and at a pretty affordable price. But if you're that person who's kind of been there, done that, and you're looking for chef prepared food, flyouts every day to remote waters, you want to catch that fish that hasn't been caught before, we also, provide that. So
Right.
again, our goal is to just make sure that you're on that trip that you're looking for.
And the interesting thing is if you tried to book that trip on your own, go Google fly fishing Alaska lodge or whatever you want,
Yeah,
and you're going to get thousands and thousands of lodges that are going to pop up.
right.
And how do you make that decision, right? That's where we really help facilitate that. And the other thing is there's a lot of people that go, I want to go to Alaska because that's what they've heard and that's what they've maybe been told by friends. And then you get them on the phone as an agency and you have multiple options, or you have traveled enough to advise them and say, hey, you really want to chase this type of fish, you may want to go and explore this zone as well. They have really good options for that. It's not
Right.
Alaska, but I'll tell you the experience that you're going to have here sounds like more of what you're looking for. So those kind of things come up, and as you mentioned, it for us it's non-competitive in that manner.
Yeah.
We want to book you, we want to get you into a trip, but we also know if we get you into a trip and it's the right trip, you're going to come back. That's our value, right?
100%. Yep.
In the same thing, if we send you to the lodge as a service and you get there and you have a great experience, they also know this person is going to come back. And so it really is a symbiotic relationship in so many ways, from all three sides, right? The consumer, the agency, and the lodge. And
100%.
the reality is it typically puts together the best scenario.
A lot of your really well-run lodges are actually, catching on to this idea of wanting to work with a booking agency. And I have some lodges that I work with that exclusively, they don't do trade shows anymore. They don't do any paid advertising anymore. They're strictly working through booking agencies and
Mm-hmm.
taking care of them, and vice versa. So I
Yeah,
think we all need
and
to shift.
right. If you think about it, this is one thing I always like to kind of talk about. A lot of lodge owners or guide services, they started out as anglers. They didn't start out as
Oh yeah,
entrepreneurs and
yeah,
business owners, right? They took the leap. Some made the transition flawlessly and have, great businesses, but they still want to focus on the customer service side. That they know is going to provide retention. It's going to bring people back to the lodge, et cetera, et cetera. And so we really focus in my organization on letting them focus on that while we focus on the marketing, the decision making, and the booking side of things, all of that. Then you get to the lodge and everything's taken care of. So, there is a transition there that has to be made. And some, like I said, made that transition flawlessly. Some remained anglers, right?
right.
But they have a business on the side.
Yep.
And there's a place for that, and there's a place where that isn't a fit for some people, as we mentioned earlier. So always keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's a great point. And then, like I was saying before, there's really good intentions. I mean, they provide great experiences, and but I always say, a lot of the little details that a booking agency picks up on um, are the difference makers. They're the ones that, yes, you're obviously going to a lodge in Alaska. Yes, you're obviously going to be catching salmon, but it's all the things in between that are what wrecks a trip. The guide.
And let's talk about some of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
talk about some of that. List some of those off, and let's talk in detail there because I
You
think
know,
that's a
not
great subject.
the big one is, not providing the gear that they're expected. They run them at the trade show. There's a lot of people that don't necessarily have the gear to go up to Alaska or to some of these other places. I don't have an 8 weight. Do you guys provide those things? Oh yeah, we'll have some 8 weights there. Do you guys provide waders? I can get some, but oh no, we've got waders, but they stink. They have holes in them. The fly rod is there, but it's not in the best condition. My favorite one is, do you serve not vegetarian meals? I don't eat meat, or I have gluten issues. Oh, absolutely. And then the meal comes, and their idea of a vegetarian meal is the meal minus the meat. Just
Right.
taking the chicken off, and there's your vegetarian meal. And so
Yeah.
those little things, even though you had an amazing day out on the water, If the bedroom isn't clean, if the food isn't done right, and you've been told that it is, that's when the wheels start to fall off.
Mm-hmm.
We've had guides. We were just on a trip, and one of the guides smokes, and was very, very important that that guide was told, not on this trip, not with these people, because we don't have one single person on this trip that smokes or wants to be around that. So
Yeah.
you have to
I'm a
be
prime example of that. I've seen it. I'm a
100%.
cancer survivor. My left lung is 90% scar tissue. And
So
it was lymphoma.
unbelievable what that do
Okay.
for you.
So
Yeah,
I've gotten on boats, and the guy, the first thing he does is spark up a cigarette. And it's uncomfortable for me to say, hey man, I hate to tell you this, but no cigarettes today. I
yeah,
paid for a trip and I'm not going to put up with that because it kills me all day,
100%.
literally. And,
No,
and that's a very simple thing from a courtesy standpoint. And I've been on both sides of the equation where you see the reaction of the guide in a very negative response. And
oh
then
yeah,
I've seen the other of, I'm so sorry. I didn't even think of it. It's just a habit. Not a problem.
right.
And those are different experiences. And usually that translates into other service areas within the business, that type of attitude or communication style,
Yeah.
right? And so those are some of the values of, I think an agency as well, understanding that that level of service is going to be delivered because we're sending you as one of our customers. You're
Yeah, the
valued
buck
to
stops
us.
with us. That the buck
Yeah.
stops with us. And where I've seen in a lot of lodges, maybe it's the person that was representing the experience at the trade show, a lot of things get passed. Oh, so and so didn't pass an information on to me. Oh, I didn't know. And I see them scramble and do a really good job of patching it up, making it better. Again, back to that good intentions. Nobody's trying to screw anybody here, but at the same time, I think that sometimes the guides and outfitters forget, because they do this day in and day out, that that person standing in front of you has just dropped somewhere between $4,000 and $8,000 to be on this experience,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got to be perfect. A lot of these people have worked their butts off to make this happen. This has truly been a dream trip, and when things start to go sideways like that, it's, again, one of the biggest motivating factors of why I wanted to get into this business was because I knew that it could be a great business. There's so many people traveling, but I also knew there was a lot of disappointment out there, and
Mm-hmm.
there didn't need to be. People were still catching fish and sleeping in good beds, and having almost good experience. And if we could just fix a couple things like appropriate gear lists or food allergies, and get ahead of the game and make sure that the lodge understood that these are the clients that we have, these are the experience that they're looking for. These two
Mm-hmm.
guys are diehard anglers. They want to fish from morning till night. They want to eat their lunch on the run, and you better have a guide that
Yep.
really, really gets it. I got these other two that are completely beginners. They've got great attitudes. They just need a really fun guide, and they probably want to leave the lodge a little early and then come home a little late. Great, And I got this
Yeah.
other guy, kind of an ass, but he's a good dude. He's
It's so
communicating.
funny. I call that angler expectation.
Yeah,
That's usually where I start my conversation with someone is what is your expectation as an angler for this trip? What do you want to accomplish? Let's talk about that first because
right.
that's really going to guide where, how, when, what, etc. for your trip. And what's really neat about that is you can bifurcate that in a decision making process in multiple ways. One, you can say this is the lodge scenario or this is the region scenario.
Yeah,
But then you can also say within this lodge, I can facilitate that type of environment because they do, like you said, the hardcore angler that wants to be out all day, and they also do the beginner guy who's like going to want to go out, catch some fish, come back a little earlier, not be hammered. Maybe he's got a buddy with some health issues or
yeah,
first time spouse or something like that, and wants to make it fun. right? So there's all kinds of scenarios, and that's where when you and I go and vet these places or we set our groups, we really focus on how are they going to facilitate that change of environment. And then I also think one of the big things I like to work with my partners with is on situational awareness. Are they able to
Yeah,
identify when the angler expectation has changed along the path? And is that just that's good communication? That's
yeah,
like some lodges I go to at the end of the day, someone always comes in. How was your day? What did you guys do that you enjoyed? This is the plan for tomorrow. Does that sound good for you? We have this alternative if that's not the right fit. They are able to adjust and really communicate well. And, that's something I really like to look for.
totally, totally. I love that. And I love the fact, I think one of the things that people miss too is that yes, we're there to look after the angler, but we're also looking out after the outfitter and the guide. And it ends up
Mm-hmm.
kind of working for both of them because so many growing up, a lot of my friends guided. And I also hear this from the lodges that I work with now. They were sitting around a campfire and they're talking about last season's elk hunts or the fishing trips and how many people get in their boats or get to their camps and are unprepared, don't have the gear that they need, have the wrong fly rod, have the wrong line on it for streamer fishing, have the wrong optics for their rifle, whatever it might be, there's always something wrong with the gear. So now you got the guide knowing that he's got this angler or hunter who's not, and the hunter's trying to be something that they're or the angler's something that they're not necessarily, and then that just immediately gets the trip set, heading in the wrong direction versus
Mm-hmm.
someone showing up and knowing and having the exact gear that they're supposed to have. Now the guide and outfitter are, extremely happy. And we've
Right.
also been talking to the outfitter about what these individuals' experiences, what the experiences are that they're looking for, and so they're set up for success. We're not heading out to permit water with a wind in our face and expecting 60-foot casts in the wind with these people. So let's just
Right.
not go there. Let's go drone fishing right now, wind at our back, and let's start having some fun. So
Right.
it's again setting up the angler, making sure that their expectations are met with the outfitter, but also letting the outfitter know what kind of guests are coming to the lodge so that they can be
Yeah.
prepared as well.
Yeah. And I always love it when an outfitter comes to you, and I'm sure you've run into this before, and they're like, "Hey, how do we facilitate that?" And you go, "Oh, just when you set up your matchups the night before, make sure the guide goes in and talks to them. Hey, what gear do you have? Let's make
Yeah,
sure we're set because we want to get out of here early tomorrow, or we want to do this to be successful. What we're going to do. Okay,
yeah,
well, I have this, and this. Okay, well, that's probably not going to work for what we want to do tomorrow. Let's use this rig or that rig. Really walk them through it. Be their coach and their guide. It starts before you get in the boat.
totally.
Is the way I kind of like to look at it. And I think the other element is, they're really out there to win, right? As a guide service, but as an angler, also remember they're often in very remote places where they are limited in their resources.
Yeah,
So your communication as an angler is also very important. As an angler, when I go to a lodge, some of the first things I do is I review with whoever it is. Hey, look, these are my expectations. This is what I talked to Brian about or Christian about, and this is we all on the same page? Okay, great. All right, how do
yeah.
we facilitate that? And it's like we're all fishermen in a lot of way or anglers, whatever, you know. And just keeping in that mind set of like, hey, let's work together. It's a team approach. Really is a great way to have a good trip.
I agree. We just got back from a hosted trip up in Canada at Sandspit Adventures. We had 10 clients, all variety of experience level. We had cancer survivors, we had husband and wives, we had solo guys just wanting to go on an experience. We had 20-year-old and we had a 78, 80-year-old. So we had the gamut. And we ended up having an amazing trip and have nothing but 5-star reports back because what a lot of people were saying was just all of the work that went into the prior to the trip.
Mm-hmm.
Again, gear, making sure that everybody had the right stuff, making sure that everybody's food requirements were met, so that when the meals came out, the vegetarian, and we did have one in our group, got an amazing meal. And she even commented, there's not very many places that you go on that really do appreciate and make a nice meal like this. And so
Yeah.
it was the attention to the detail. The other thing that the outfitter did that I thought was great was he got to know everybody that first night before he matched them up with the guides, and he did a perfect job of getting everybody matched up. And again, just it was the communication aspect of it, working with the outfitter, which you have your great relationships, we have our great
Hmm.
relationships, and like I tell the people that they're signing up for these trips, the nice part about working with a company like yours or mine is you are an individual, and yes, they absolutely care about you 100%. But when you're working with a booking agency like us that sends, 20, 30, 40, 50 people there, the carpet's just going to get a little bit redder. There's just going to be a
Hmm.
little bit more attention to detail. Plus, no one provides them with the amount of detailed information that we provide them with. It's always kind of shooting from the hip.
Yeah.
So when they get a full lineup of who you are, the experience that you're looking for, the gear that you have, and any allergies or food requirements, the outfitter loves that at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, I mean, you show up with a rap sheet or a resume from
Literally.
us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And versus showing up and it was maybe a 30-minute or 45-minute conversation on the phone. That's great.
Yep.
But I guarantee they most likely weren't taking the notes that they probably should, because it was an out of sorts call, just a regular call, et cetera. They may remember or recall some of that, but they've also seen 20, 30 people in between now and then easily. Sometimes you're booking way out of advance. All those scenarios come into play. So, yeah, there is quite a bit of value that I think we bring, and that's always my goal is to bring value to the approach, right? You mentioned it in our quick conversation before we started here today. People use booking agencies all the time. If you were going to go to Paris or Germany or travel around Europe, go to Australia, whatever, you
Yeah.
wouldn't even hesitate to
Right.
use a booking agency or help make your decision process, right? But for some reason in this scenario, I think anglers are so passionate about the details that they want to be so intimately involved in selection and the perfection of the environment, right?
Right. Right.
And controlling that, right? Because we're used to having that control. Okay, I know if I get in this zone in this place and have these bugs and blah, 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 I'm going to have success. And so
Yep.
we start to apply often that same mentality. Whereas I think the reality is if you boil the ocean down to someone that has a lot of that experience and has a variety of information to select from, we can really help you make that decision and get narrowed down and kind of boil the ocean, et cetera, for you. And then you come to a decision making process, because most people, they go do research, 3-4 hours of research on the web and 30 websites later. And what are they, Brian?
Confused.
Confused, indecisive, they
Yeah.
don't book, they're
Yeah.
frustrated, all those things. So, yeah, tough. It's a tough go. I've done it. That's why I transitioned.
Yeah. Well, and we're actually a solution. We are the solution to that more analytical angler, the person who really does want to have all of the details and know what bugs. Maybe wants to tie a few patterns up themselves, whatever it might be. We are actually the solution because we pick up the phone when people call. We provide service at a more intimate level
Mm-hmm.
during normal business hours, et cetera, et cetera. So there's just a lot of value that we bring. I think people just need to honestly try it, because what I have experienced is, and I say this humbly, but our return rate once people start booking with us is massive. I can't tell you
Yeah.
exactly what it is, but we have now become the solution for people that were either looking for going on fishing adventures or had been going on them and have the nightmare stories that they
Mm-hmm.
no longer have anymore. And I always tell people, just imagine, you know, saving your money for 12, 16 months. It's your son's graduation, or maybe it's a guy's trip that you've been planning, or a gal's trip. You
Yep.
know, the you've put your deposit down on this $5,000 trip. You've got another $2,500 coming. You're spending 800, you thought, but then there's that extra flight that you didn't know about from Anchorage over to the other island, or from
Hmm.
Buenos Aires over to El Calafate. No problem, another $600. And then you get, well, what are tips going to be? Oh shit, yeah, tips are almost going to be another
Hmm.
$1,000, and I need to get this fly line. And you're justifying it the whole way because you're excited. You know, this is a trip of a lifetime. And you get there, and that sucker starts to go one of two directions. And it can either go that direction, like, I didn't think it was going to be like that. I was told to have this kind of fly line. I wish I wouldn't have wasted my money on it. I
Hmm.
wish I would have been told this. Or it could go the other direction where, every ounce of money you spent is forgotten. This is the trip of a lifetime. The T's have been crossed, the I's have been dotted, and your
Ah.
expectations are not just met, but they're exceeded. That is our goal. That is what you and I do. We make
Hmm.
sure that your hard earned money, all the excitement, all the working out, all the honeydew lists that you're doing are worth it. That you're come
Yeah.
off that trip going, wow, I would do that again, versus, damn, I wish I would have known that. And that's the
Yeah.
difference. And everything we do is free. So why not?
Yeah. I always I like to make the comment, we're booking a vacation, not a trip, guys.
Yeah, yeah,
We want you to have a vacation.
exactly.
A trip is great. I do work trips all the time, and they
It's
can be fun,
a
but it's
great
not a
point.
vacation.
Right,
And I
right,
want you to have a vacation.
right.
So, yeah, I just I ran into it, and you talked a little bit about this in that last little bit there, and that's group dynamics,
Yeah,
right? How often do most people do not book a trip by themselves? They usually book it with a buddy or a spouse or a group. And that group dynamics environment then adds a whole nother element of the decision making process. How is the outfit going to be able to facilitate that? Because we go back to that same discussion we had earlier about angler expectation, where your expectation may be different than the rest of the group. So we can help facilitate that as well. And that coordination then falls off of your shoulders as, yeah, I talked to my friends and we were going to book a trip to BC and it's going to be awesome. And you find out, well, the one guy wants to do flyouts on helicopters all day, and the other guy wants to just fish the lakes, and one guy wants to fish rivers, and oh, okay, well, this is different for everybody.
yeah,
Let's make sure we get you to the right place that can actually facilitate that, right? Because everybody's making the investment, everybody's going on the vacation, so let's facilitate that too. Any other last things that you think would be of really high value to our listeners here, Brian?
I think you just kind of touched on one thing I wanted to let people know, that, you know, that scenario you just laid out is a scenario I run into all the time, where I'll get a phone call on a Monday from a guy or a gal that says, I've got a group of people that are seriously interested about going to this particular location. And as we begin to provide information, what we find out is those personalities, it was going to Alaska or going to Argentina was kind of the good idea. But once we got there, what we wanted to do began to become very, very different. And so
Mm-hmm.
what ends up happening ultimately is that nothing happens. Time and time again, nothing happens, versus something happening where where the other alternative would be that you go to a lodge that could meet all of those different expectations you were talking about. The vast majority of the time, what happens is it just kind of falls off. And so I tell people this, like you've mentioned a couple of times, hosted trips are a great way to make sure that at least you and your tight fishing buddy are going on some of these different excursions that meet
Mm-hmm.
your needs. The other thing too is there's a lot of single anglers out there, guys that and gals that
Yep.
do have the money, do have the time and energy, but maybe their buddies don't share the passion at the level that they do, or don't have as deep of pockets as they do. And there's a level of intimidation about going to Jurassic Lake in Argentina by themselves, but they've always wanted to do it. They've read about it. They've seen it
Yep.
at the Fly Fishing Film Festival, whatever it might be. hosted trips are a great way to make sure that you're going on some of these really cool trips. And uh, all the booking agencies, at least the good ones, have really cool trips that, whether it's Jurassic Lake or over to Cuba or up to Alaska or Christmas Island. So I just wanted to make sure that the angler out there knew that, if you're one of those solo anglers or one of those guys who gets frustrated because those group trips never end up coming to fruition, it's year after year, and it's time for you to start fishing, jump on one of our hosted trips, jump on one of your hosted trips, jump on one of these booking agencies' websites and find out the different hosted trips they're offering the next year. Start getting some information on it, pick the one that's going to be the best fit for you.
Yeah. And I love the hosted trip scenario because you get the services of the lodge and or guiding organization,
Yep.
and a lot of those singles, they're looking for information.
Right.
Like you said, they're the diehards, like they have the passion. And so you get that element of it, but then you get the host who has maybe sometimes slightly different perspectives, other skill sets than the guides. You then start to talk about other regions and experiences together, and it becomes this like massive learning environment really easily. And you got somebody that hang out with and enjoy your company with, that you've probably had some kind of interaction with on the front end that it just makes for a great trip. So
It
that's
really
one of my
does.
favorite things to do is I love guys that are super passionate, girls, etc., and go on these hosted trips and you just have a fantastic time. You learn from each other. I've got lifelong relationships because of it. So
Yep, yep. And people always come away with a new friend. This last group that we had up in Canada, there's people swapping emails and Instagram accounts, so on and so forth, because they become friends up there. And
mhm.
for the listeners, you did a good job of kind of defining a hosted trip is really where we kind of take over the lodge, take over for a week and get a bunch of like-minded anglers there to enjoy the experience that that lodge is providing. And the advantage of it is you're there with a bunch of like-minded anglers, cool people like yourself. Everything is 100% taken care of for you. And it's, essentially these trips happen to be sometimes just a little bit better than your standard trips because it is a hosted trip. We are filling the lodge, and it's usually with one of the booking agencies. So it can be not can be. I haven't had one. We've done many hosted trips around the world, and they've all been very, very successful from the
Yeah.
standpoint of just people really enjoying the experience and coming away with some good friends.
Yeah. And there's a second level of service that's added to that from your host,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And there's a lot of things that come from that, whether it's, uh, I've done coaching things, I've done goodie bags and introductions to other people in their regions that they go back and fish with. And it's just really a neat thing to experience as an angler at some time if you can do that. Well, we're going to,
coach
go ahead.
just talked about that coaching thing. Another for those out there that are working with companies or maybe executives or CEOs, we do a lot of hosted trips for
Hmm.
companies and teams, for culture building, and like you said, bringing in a coach to kind of talk about some motivational stuff, and then the activities going out fishing and stuff. So a lot of the lodges, as a matter of fact, the one that we were just at is perfectly set up for corporate hosted trips or experiences like that. So
Hmm.
we do a lot of
Hmm.
that as well.
Very cool. Very cool. Um, let's do this. We're going to transition now out of our discussion of the value out of the agency, and
Yeah.
we're going to talk about approaching water and staying in the mental game. You have obviously had a ton of interaction with anglers over the years at multiple locations, and you have a really interesting approach to this that's very simple in nature, but extremely effective. So let's jump into that, Brian, and give us your perspective there.
Yeah, I wanted to bring something to the table that was a little bit different. Everybody's got an Instagram account, can, get a tip or trick from an angler out there, and they're great. But the one that I feel gets missed all the time, you may have followed the tip on what fly to use. You may have followed the tip on how to cast it, how to tie the knot, how to put the hopper dropper in the right spot, whatever it might be. But the single biggest thing that I have seen affect someone's day of fishing is their attitude and the energy that they bring to the water. And I think all of us can relate to, feeling like you're in the zone and you literally just can't miss, and feeling like you're leaving the zone and spiraling out of control. And I mean, when I mean spiraling out of control, meaning, you're not happy for your fishing partner. I mean, let's just
Mm-hmm.
be honest. A lot of people aren't even going to admit this, but we've all been on the water before, and your buddy is stroking it, and you're not happy to go over and net that fish because you're not catching them, and you don't want to feel that way, but you do. And then you
Yeah.
get done, you take a shitty picture of your buddy because you've already taken 7 of them and you're sick of it, and you get back to your casting and your mind is just filled with negativity, and you're doing everything right. But the one thing that you're not doing is, and it's kind of the same thing that we need to be bringing into life, and that's that, a staying positive, keeping a positive
Yep.
perspective of what's really going on and what's really important, and also being there for others. That service to others comes in so many different forms and fashions, and we know that in normal life, that when we get outside of ourselves and we're really truly serving others, that life just seems to click.
Mm-hmm.
Any one of us who've tried it, it's
Yeah.
just the way that it works, right? Not only do we
Yeah.
feel good inside, but life just seems to kind of work. It's identical out on the fishing, identical. When
Yeah.
your buddy catches that great fish and he's excited, you need to be excited for him. And if you can even fake it, it works. When it comes time to take that quality photo and you want to take just a quick photo, get down on your knees, get a better angle on the fish, guide her into a
Yeah.
perfect position. Take a lot of pride in taking that photo. Take a lot of pride in being excited, getting the fishing rod off to the side and getting them in the net and putting them in the perfect position to come off with just a winner of a photo. If
Mm-hmm.
you'll Not only will it change just your whole experience that day, make you feel much better, but I've seen it time and time again produce the results that you're looking for, and that's catching
Yeah.
that big fish.
Yeah.
This was more of a hunting scenario. We have an outfit over in Argentina that does kind of a cast and blast, golden dorado, and stag hunt, and I had a guy who's hunted all over the world. Great guy. He was an older gentleman, and he went over there by himself. And his hunt was spiraling out of control. And it's because he stepped into it, kind of knowing it all, and was, trying to kind of tell the guides how he does it, and on some of the different approaches. This guy knows what he's doing, right? I mean, there's no question about it. But the energy that he approached the hunt and the fishing trip with, and it really started to backfire on him. And he was 2 days from being done, and we got on the phone, and I just said, hey, you got to do me a favor. We can all be excellent in certain areas and at certain times, but there's also a time to just be humble and take the back seat. And this is the one for you. This isn't your ranch, this isn't your place. And if you'll just listen and just do exactly what the person's telling you, and just change your attitude, that they know everything and you know nothing, versus you know everything and they know nothing. And that's an attitude that a lot of people end up getting with their guides and stuff, is
Yep.
you don't know what you're doing. And if you just stay cool, it almost always turns around. And it was the very next day, I got a couple of photos of some amazing animals and some amazing fish, and he was smiling ear to ear. And so the energy thing is real. And just staying positive, whether you're by yourself and remembering why you're there. And the other thing is when you're fishing with your buddy, give up the best hole. Trust me, it works.
Mm.
Be there for others, really be excited as they are. Take great photos. Take a lot of pride in getting that fish netted. Make sure that it gets in the net. And you'll be surprised at how not only does it change your day, but also changes your success.
Yep.
It makes
It's
you more fun to fish with too, to be honest with
it
you.
is. It is. I'm going to use the example of fishing with one of my best friends. He's my angling buddy, Todd Jurgensen, and Todd is like super humble guy. He's a fantastic angler. Um, but it's the same repetition for us every time we go.
Yeah.
We Rochambeau, who gets the first go or the front seat or whatever.
Yep.
And it's so interesting because whoever wins, it's like, yeah, buddy, I can hear his voice. He's done it so many times and so consistently. he's supportive. He's like, I got your line. We're going to go out. We're going to hunt him down, man. We're going to get this done. And he's back there working with me and he's excited, and you get to hook up and it's like, yeah, you're going nuts, and, you get it to the net, and it's a celebration. It's a joint. You're all winning. And
So
that
we got
environment
totally.
that in comparison to the other side where I've been there, it's a rough day, the weather's hard, and you're like, man, they're in the front of the boat and they're eating them up. And I'm like back here getting all the drags, and you're like, well, you can make all those excuses, right? Or
Yep.
you can just sit in and enjoy the environment and what's happening for that person, and your turn's going to come.
Yeah.
It's
100%.
going to come.
And there's
So I agree. I'm a mental mind over body guy. I mean, cancer survivor, that was my big thing, right?
yeah.
I always use the mantra, I don't get up to give up. So if you have that
Oh,
kind of attitude, I'll
I
tell you,
love it.
man, there's a lot of success in life, Brian. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
hey, it's been fantastic having you on the show. I'm so glad that we connected.
Thank you.
We've shared so much information with each other, even though a lot of people look at us as competitors. I don't view it that way. I know you don't. In fact, if we are hearing each other's names, I think it's time for celebration,
Yeah.
because that means more and more people are booking trips. And I hope this was of extreme value to you guys as listeners. If you want to get a hold of Brian, go to gotfishing.com. Brian, is there another way that's maybe easier, or is that the best for you?
You can go to our website, gotfishing.com, sign up for our newsletter. We'll bug you once a week with some really cool adventures. You get on our Instagram, which is just at gotfishing. Would probably be the two best ways to, stay on top of kind of what we're doing, the different fishing adventures, and then also learn a little bit about some of the upcoming hosted trips, different deals. We also have discounted deals that come that are kind of short notice stuff, but outfitters looking to get a cancellation filled. So those as well. Those would be the two best ways.
Yeah. And I highly recommend just pick up the phone, call Got Fishing, and have a conversation. Start there.
Yeah.
Whether you're planning a trip now or not, because they're going to be able to help you from that scenario as well. Like, hey, I don't really have a trip in mind, but I know maybe I want to go on a trip sometime, or I might try and put something together with some friends, and that can really facilitate. You can learn a lot in just a 15, 20-minute conversation with an advisor, and pick up something that is going to be a great time for you guys. So we hope you get out there, get your lines tight, and thanks again, Brian. It was a great show having you on here, and we'll catch up with you soon. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week.